Hi, I am Dr. Devika, Readers, Author Department of Orthodontics, Labial Bow of Dental Sciences. Today I am going to demonstrate you regarding fabrication of labial bow. We all know labial bow is an important component in removable orthodontic appliances. Usually it is studied as an active component, but still this can be used. This is commonly used in a passive appliance as a passive component, like as in fabrication of Halley's appliance at the end of the orthodontic treatment for the purpose of retention. So the position of this labial bow is going to be altered depending upon its purpose. If it is used as an active component, or it is used for the purpose of when it is used for the purpose of closing spaces or retraction of anteriors, mild retraction. So this labial bow is positioned in the middle third of the crown, of anteriors. So when it is used for the purpose of retention, it is placed at the junction of middle third and incisal third. So this positioning of the labial bow at the middle third for the purpose of retraction is to keep the force as close to the center of resistance as possible. Now I am going to demonstrate the same on the model, on the study. Yeah, that's a labial bow which is fabricated with a 21 gauge wire. I am going to take an approximate size of the wire. After cutting it out from the spool, you can take an approximate length by measuring from the distal of the third molar or the second molar of one side to the other side for a short labial bow. This is the measurement, approximate measurement which you are going to take. So we know like the arch form is in a curved fashion. So similarly, we are going to fabricate a labial bow in a curved fashion. We have done we usually will do this curvature by fabricating a circle in basic wire bending exercise. Similarly, from canine to canine, the arch will be in an absolute circular fashion. So as such, we are going to draw out a labial bow into a circular fashion, which is going to confine to the transverse dimension of the arch in the anterior region. So you can see I am gently drawing out with my thumb and index finger a gentle curvature. So this is going to be the curvature which is confined and in particular to this study model. So if at all if we take a patient model, this arch form will not be the same. The transverse dimension is going to be different. So we should fabricate it. We should furthermore decrease the circumference of this circle, this arc. So I am going to demonstrate on the ideal model. So you can see whenever we are going to fabricate a labial bow for the purpose of retention, we are going to place it at the incisal middle third junction of the crown. So and for the purpose of retention, the labial bow is going to extend till the middle and mesial third of the canine. This is the distal third, this is the middle third, and this is the mesial third. So labial bow is going to extend from the mesial third and middle third junction of the canine on one side to the other side. This is how we are going to fabricate the labial bow, extension of the labial bow when it is used for the purpose of retention, as a retention labial bow. So similarly, when it is used for the purpose of retraction, the labial bow is placed in the middle third. So vertically, if you can look, this is the gingival third, this is the middle third, and this is the occlusal third or incisal third. So we are whenever the labial bow is used for the purpose of retraction or space closure or as an active component, it is placed in this middle third, in this middle portion. When it is placed when it is used for the purpose of retraction, it is positioned at the incisal middle third junction. Hope you all understood. And this labial bow also, whenever it is used for the purpose of retraction, it is only extended till the junction between the lateral and canine. So now I am going to show you, I am going to give a demonstration on the retention labial bow. So you can see after fabricating this arc shaped fashion or a circular fashion in the bow on the 21 gauge wire, I am going to mark it horizontal extension from the mesial and middle third junction on the canine on one side to the other side. So after marking it, from this portion I am going to fabricate a U loop. You see, after at the distal extension of the labial bow, we will be fabricating an U-loop. Then the U-loop will be extending 2 to 3 millimeters below the gingival margin. This is the gingival margin, and the U-loop is going to extend 2 to 3 mm below this gingival margin. This U-loop is again going to recurve like a hairpin bend. It's going to take a hairpin bend and it's going to get adapted. It will be adapted onto the in between interdental region between the canine and first premolar. So now, after I have given the markings on the labial bow on the canine at the junction of middle and mesial third. From there, I am going to give a vertical 90 degrees bend. So we need to see that these bends are more or less perpendicular to the floor. So this is in order to make sure that the bow is the U-loop after fabricating is not going to hit here and there onto the gingiva. So it makes things easy when we make sure that the U-loop is perpendicular. This point, this 90 degrees bend is going to be absolutely perpendicular to the floor. So after this, we need to mark the extension. As I said, like this retention labial bow will be fabricated will be positioned at the incisal middle third junction. So from here the labial bow is going to extend 2 to 3 millimeters below the gingival margin. So I am going to mark the length of the U-loop by taking the measurement in this way. So you can see I am going to extend the labial bow part and take the measurement in such a way. So this makes things simple and symmetric. Both sides I am going to mark the mesial leg of U-loop length. Yes. So after marking with the third loop, the universal plier is going to have 3 steps with the third step in position at the point where I have marked. With that in mind, I am going to fabricate, I am going to rotate the wire around this loop, around the third step of the universal plier. This is going to give us a nice U-bend. Similarly, on the other side, with the marking, at the point of marking, I am going to use this third step and fabricate a nice U-loop. So one thing what we need to keep in mind is, from the canine, distal to the canine, the arch is going to be becoming more straight. Till the canine, the arch will be having a gentle curvature. Whereas distal to the canine, we will be seeing that the arch is going to be more or less in a straight line. So this distal leg of the U-loop as well as the mesial leg of U-loop or the total U-loop should follow this curvature. So we need to keep this in mind while adapting the labial bow. If we are not going to adapt it properly, the labial bow will be active even prior to the positioning, and this will make things uncomfortable. This is going to, whenever it is placed intraorally, it is going to move the tooth haphazardly. So that's why we need to adapt the distal leg of U-loop in accordance with the arch form. So I am going to hold the labial bow in this fashion. We shouldn't hold the labial bow like this onto the curvature. Instead, I am going to hold it in this way such that it is not going to distort the bow. So one other thing what we need to keep in mind is the labial bow, the U-loop of the labial bow also shouldn't impinge onto the gingiva. Normally, most of the time when you don't take care of it, this U-loop is going to impinge onto the gingiva, and when placed intraorally on the patient, it might traumatize the gingiva and it will cause a lot of iatrogenic problems. So we need to make sure that it is also not going to touch the gingiva. So for that purpose also, not only I have twisted the wire into the arch form, but also I have lifted the lower part of the U-loop little bit out such that it doesn't hit the gingiva badly. So after fabricating after positioning the labial bow, and after fabricating the U-loops, next is the formation of retentive tags. The retentive tags usually they are adapted interdentally across the contact point between the premolar and the canine. So for this purpose also you shouldn't use it is preferable to use a round beak of universal plier such that you can move the distal leg of U-loop close to the interdental region. You shouldn't give an abrupt bend, instead the bend should be gentle. So as you can see, once it has become excessive, the bend has become excessive, so I can reduce that bend, the curvature which is given towards the tooth. So every time, every moment after giving a bend onto this distal legs, we need to see that we need to keep the labial bow in position on the incisor at the incisor middle third junction and hold it with the thumb to see whether it is been in active state or in a passive state. So after this, I can see that the distal leg of the U-loop is going to come into contact, and I am going to contact with the premolar and the canine interdental region, and I am going to mark that region such that from there I can give an appropriate bend. This is a crossover wire which is going to cross the occlusal surface in the molar between the premolar and canine. So this crossovering is very essential, because if this crossover is not appropriate, it might hinder the occlusion. It might hinder with the occlusion. The occlusion, the patient, whenever the patient is going to bite, the lower premolar is going to come and sit there, and it will hit there, and the occlusion might not be proper. So for this purpose, we need to adapt it onto the occlusal table absolutely nicely. So after every bend, again you can see I am placing my thumb over the labial bow and checking, making sure that it is not being lifted or it is being passive. So this crossover has to be done very gently. See that it's not been located above the level of occlusion table. So one other thing I am just going to make sure is the distal leg of U-loop will always be larger than the mesial leg, because the contact between the canine and premolar is located at a higher position. You can see the contact between the premolar and canine is located a little bit higher when compared to the location of the labial bow. So as such, the distal leg of the U-loop, which is going to pass interdentally between the canine and premolar, will be a little bit longer when compared to the mesial leg. You can see the same on the labial bow also. On the fabricated U-loop, the mesial leg is little smaller when compared to the distal leg. So after marking onto the occlusal aspect, I am going to adapt it gently onto the palatal surface. So we know the palatal surface of the palatal surface, on the palatal aspect, it is curved, the palate is curved. So we need to keep in mind regarding this curvature while adapting the retentive tags. So if at all the retentive tags are not adapted passively, it will further result in labial bow which is very active. So every time you give a bend while adapting the retentive tag, you need to check this position of the labial bow, whether it is active or passive or things like that. So you need to give a gentle sweep in the retentive tag such that it will adapt as close to the palate as possible, following its curvature. So this is how we will be fabricating and adapting. One other thing is we need to make sure that this labial bow is not going to hinder with the rest of the wire components. So we can keep this tag little small. So because when fabricating an appliance, along with the labial bow, we might be keeping a finger spring to move the inserts mesodistally, or will be fabricating a jet spring to move an incisor labially. So these tags, the tags of these things also shouldn't be acting as a hindrance to the tags of the labial bow. So we need to keep it little bit short, not excessive. So if you can examine, I haven't cut the wire. I haven't cut this wire because I have taken approximate measurement of the bow. While fabricating the bow, I have taken a measurement which is from the distal of second molar on one side to that of other. So this has made the things very easy. I haven't used any excess, or I haven't cut off any excessive wire, and it has absolutely came out nicely. The wire is very adequate. I have used the full length of the wire. So there are few things which need to be kept in mind and which needs to be monitored after, or which need to be checked after fabricating a labial bow. One thing is the retentive tags nicely seating onto the palatal aspect, nicely adapted onto the palatal aspect. At the same time, we need to make sure that the U-loops are not hitting. You can see the U-loop shouldn't hit. The U-loop shouldn't hit this gingiva here. There should be paper thin or 1 mm clearance from the gingiva, as well as the retentive tag adaptation is fine, and the labial bow position is not going to get disturbed. I have fabricated this labial bow keeping in mind that it is used for the purpose of retention and placed at the incisor middle third junction. So after fabrication, after total fabrication of a labial bow, after adapting the tags, the position of the bow should be appropriately there depending upon the purpose, and the tags nicely adapted onto the palatal aspect. It should be very passive like this. It shouldn't be active, keeping in close contact with the tooth. It should be very passive. So when we require to activate, when we need to activate, then you can use you can compress the U-loops. So with this, you know that the fabrication of short labial bow is completed. Similar to a short labial bow, in a long labial bow, you are going to extend this U-loop till the distal of the first premolar. And when fabricating a long labial bow, we will be using the second step of universal plier rather than the third step, because the canine is a little bit bulkier mesodistally. It is the U-loop should be fabricated with a third step. When it is used for the premolar, wherein for the first premolar long labial bow, so we will be using a second step of the universal plier. So this is in brief about a short labial bow.